Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How's your day going so far?
It's going pretty good. It's about 2 p.m. here. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Vancouver, so it's
Oh, okay. I
it's
was
just,
just there.
oh really?
Yeah, on a visit. I was there for the last 2 weeks.
Oh, we should have connected earlier.
Yeah, I know. I noticed when you first messaged me, you mentioned the PST time zone, so I figured maybe you're somewhere on the West Coast.
Yeah. So what were you doing in Vancouver?
Well, we sort of went for a late honeymoon because I got married last year in the midst of COVID, and we only did like a mini moon, like we went to Quebec for that. So this was sort of like a honeymoon. Just went to BC, and it was beautiful.
Congratulations, that's
Thank
amazing.
you.
So do you want to give a little bit of an introduction about yourself, what you do? Um, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Arfa, and I've been teaching yoga for the last 3.5 or so years. And what I love to do and specialize in is combining Ayurveda, which is the ancient Indian system of healing, medicine, and life, I'm sure, as you know. And I like to combine the two. I think they make a really beautiful combination and make for a really good life.
That's amazing. It was my goal pre-COVID to go to South India and do some Ayurvedic training.
Oh, really?
Happen, but it is something I research all the time. So I'm so excited to have you on here to learn from you and to learn, what practices align with your journey, and maybe we can take something away, myself and the audience here as well. Um, so I just wanted to know, like, what is the difference between holistic healing and Ayurvedic healing?
Yeah, so they're of course very similar, and Ayurveda also has a lot of ties with traditional Chinese medicine. They're similar yet different. But I guess the main difference is that it's very individualized. So, Ayurveda, in Ayurveda, we believe that everyone has their own unique mind body constitution. And so there's no one size fits all approach. If you have a stomach ache, it's for completely different reasons than why I might have one, and so on. So it's very individualized, and we sort of provide treatment and healing based on the individual rather than a whole.
Can you give me some examples around that? Like what might be a reason why something I'm experiencing, we're experiencing the same thing might be different?
Yeah, so let me think of another example actually. So, for example, the weather out right now, right? Or maybe not now. Let's use the month of September for as an example. So, in September, you might see some people outside still wearing t-shirts, and for other people, it's already like scarf and coat season, right? And that kind of explains like our innate sort of differences within our body, right? So that's an example of like um, something like that. But then there's, yeah, so many others just like that where you sort of have these differences.
So I know in Ayurveda there's a lot of talk about elements. So we have different elements in the body. And so is that what you're trying to get at? Like we are composed of different percentages of fire, earth, air, or
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that would be for example a person that has a bit more of the fire element. They're the ones that are wearing the t-shirts when it's like September, early October, because they naturally have a little more heat within them, and so on. So you can have, like you said, the five elements of air, space, fire, water, and earth.
does that tie to astrology, like natal charts and having different elements in your charts?
That I'm not too sure of. I haven't dived too much into astrology or Vedic astrology, but some that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think that it does because in my own personal chart, I don't, have you done your natal you
No.
I would love It's something I'm learning and I'm on my own journey. But
Okay.
for people that are watching, if they're interested, go ahead and shoot some questions in the chat. Um, but I know that we're composed of different elements, and that can be seen in the natal pole, whether it's Vedic or Western astrology. We can see the different composition. So that's really interesting. Also, I wanted to touch on different foods in Ayurveda are seen to be more grounding than others. Can you touch on that a little bit? Category.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So, the grounding foods, which are foods that we should try to be eating around nowadays, anyways, with the fall season, would be things like root vegetables. And so we have to kind of look at the qualities of the elements, right? So the fall season, it falls under Vata season. Vata is air and ether, right? And it's the wind energy. So you think of the qualities of the wind, which are cold, light, dry, moving. And so when we look at it from a qualities perspective, we want to maybe eat foods that are a little more of the opposite. So warm foods, lightly cooked or properly cooked foods, and things like that. So we don't want to eat light foods like chips and popcorn per se, but just eating more things like soups and stews and root vegetables and that kind of thing. So in a way, like heavier foods, but heavy in like a good and nourishing kind of way, and not unhealthy heavy foods like fast food or anything like that.
So when you say root veggies, like what are you talking about? Is it the stuff that's grown in the ground, like carrots and potatoes and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, beetroot, sweet potato. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any root veggies that you prefer over other ones that you might have a higher vibration than versus some others?
I think I would say, I mean, personally, just carrots and beets are usually my go-to, and I do like sweet potato.
And how do you usually do you do stews or like soups or do you just oven roast? What's your favorite way to eat those?
It depends. So I have a few recipe books. And sometimes I'll just look up recipes online. I guess that is, I have very few that I stick to all the time. I kind of like to try different things, but yeah, a very variations of it all.
Yeah, maybe we can link some of the recipes that you have in the description when we post this so that people can link to those. That would be great.
Yeah, like I guess khichdi is one thing that I would make more often than others because that's sort of like a common go-to. And in there, you can even throw in some carrots or beans, even potatoes sometimes. And that's a recipe that I can definitely share.
So I did a retreat one time, and it wasn't necessarily Ayurvedic cooking, but we did a lot of we did a stew with carrots and beets and sweet potatoes, and then just remembering this, it was so amazing.
Sounds really good.
But I think the what I really took away from that experience was because I was volunteering in the kitchen for that retreat. So um, the main chef, she really emphasized that whatever you're making, just make it with love and say a little prayer or affirmation as you're stirring the pot, as you're cutting the veggies, and it really resonated with me, and I still use that till today. Have you ever experienced that in Ayurveda? Do they speak on, like putting your intention, your energy into the food?
Yeah, for sure. That's a big thing. And, we're digesting not only the food, but the environment we're in when we're eating. And of course, there's big power of intention, right? If you're thinking those loving thoughts while you're cooking or even before you eat, whether it's a prayer or whatever it might be, it can even help digest your food better. It's a lot of little things go a long way.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking right now how often we, even myself, like I eat my meals sitting in front of TV sometimes or watching a movie and I'll have dinner or watching a show and I'll have my dinner. What do you think? How do you think that affects the body when we do that?
Yeah, so that I know that's a tricky one for a lot of people because it's kind of something that many of us look forward to, right? It's just coming home and having a nice meal with your show and all of that. But I mean, on one hand, it kind of just makes your experience a little less mindful, like you're just eating, but you're not mindful of anything such as like the taste or even how full you're getting. So it kind of detracts from that. And then depending on what you're watching, if it's something that's, you know, with a lot of action or violence or all of that, it's kind of just creating a bit of like mental turbulence too while you're eating. And so that can kind of make for a bit more nervous digestion because everything is connected, right? And every experience that we're having or taking in through our five senses is impacting our physiology.
Yes, I love what you just said about the nervous system and being it all being connected. It is so true. So with a lot of people experiencing issues with their digestive system, I wonder if just being mindful when you're eating will help and change things. Have you ever experienced that with your clients or your students?
Yeah, like there's a few little things that you can do, you know, when you're eating. So number one is what you just mentioned of having, you know, the TV off and kind of just like focusing on the meal or the conversation, whoever you're with. Um, but also little things like sitting on the ground to eat can help digest your food better. And after eating, they say if you take 100 steps, that can also aid with digestion. And that's, of course, nothing crazy. It could be like little steps of you walking back and forth in your house, and that kind of just helps to aid with digestion. And so it's important because in Ayurveda, digestion is the seat of our health. So these little things that we can do to help it do go a long way and have a long lasting impact.
Yeah, wow, that's really powerful. 100 steps after you eat. I'm gonna try to implement that and see what happens.
Yeah, and that might even happen naturally, whether you are, you know, consciously doing it or not. Because let's say you're cleaning up after dinner, right? You're up and you're walking around. I think the point is just not to kind of just stay on the couch afterwards. It just um, move around a bit in some ways.
Yeah.
Mhm.
James is asking, how has Ayurveda benefited you?
Yeah, so before Ayurveda, I discovered yoga before Ayurveda. And, you know, I was very fascinated and I was on this sort of like wellness and spirituality journey where you kind of are almost having this snowball effect of you just enter this new world and there's all these things you're learning. And it was incredible. And you learn so many things, but the one thing that I felt really hit home was Ayurveda. And I don't know if it's because of, you know, my roots or ancestry being from South Asia. These were a lot of practices and things that my parents used to do or that my grandparents did and still do. And a lot of it just resonated. And I felt that, you know, when you're practicing yoga and the eight-limbed path and all of that, it can get very serious and spiritual, which is not a bad thing. But I feel that Ayurveda just adds a bit of, how do I say, like color and pleasantness and warmth. And it feels like a big hug around you. Like it's because it really promotes for just a pleasant lifestyle, right? It's all lifestyle related. And, you know, nature connection, daily routines, and just, you know, nourishing the body and mind and making sure all your experiences that you're taking in from your five senses are supportive to your body and mind and so on. So it just added that bit of color to it.
You know, I love that you say that everything is connected because that is really what the series is all about. It's about showing people that yoga is everything. And it's not just about the physical poses, like you mentioned, the eight limbs of yoga. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think many of us come to yoga for the physical or the aesthetic reasons, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how I also came to yoga. I discovered it at, you know, the gym that I was going to. So it started off like that, but then the more that you dive in, even just classes at a fitness center or gym, you start to get exposed to some of the deeper elements like breath work and meditation. And so it's really important to have, I think, a holistic yoga practice where it's not just the physical poses, but you're also, living by the yamas and the niyams, which are kind of like the ethical guidelines and restraints, and also, yeah, practicing it all holistically. So I think that's very important, and you get the most benefit, I think, that way.
The yamas and the, what was it?
Niyamas.
Can you explain what that is? Because I
Yeah,
don't
sure,
there.
sure. Yamas are almost like, we could say, are like almost like the thou shall nots. Like, they include non-violence, non-greed, non-stealing, and then it also includes truthfulness, and also brahmacharya, which means it actually means celibacy, and but that's for if you're really on that yogic path. But there's the householder path as well, right, where you don't have to practice it that strictly, but it can also mean moderation. So just moderation in all of your sensory pleasures, kind of thing. So those are the five yamas, and then niyamas are purity, contentment, self-study, surrender to something greater, whatever it might be for you. And I'm just trying to remember the other one. Um, yeah, it's off my head right now, but it's probably because I feel a little on the spot. But yeah, they're basically things that these are the things that we should be following if we're on a yogic path.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you mentioned that you found yoga at your gym and this just dove right in. And I feel like that happens with everyone, really. We just kind of find it somewhere and one thing clicks. Like, what was that one thing that pulled you in and wanted to explore the world of yoga more?
Yeah, so I think it was definitely the final resting pose, Shavasana, because I think that that's when, for many people, when they practice yoga the first time, they are in this little like bubble of stillness and quiet of the mind for the first time, and it's very powerful when you are typically not experiencing that, and that's your first sort of taste of meditation. The whole practice, even the poses, is like a moving meditation, but I think at the very end, corpse pose was what kind of did it for me, because it's that feeling, that you want to come back for. And then, slowly you start to turn it into a practice of your own. So even if you're at home and not in that yoga class, you can just lay down on the ground and just focus on your breathing and kind of build a meditation practice from there.
Yeah. Um, James is asking, how important is it to exercise the mind as well as the body?
That reminds me of the one that I couldn't remember, because that relates to it. So tapas means fire or willpower, and so that's sort of also part of the yogic path. So um, it's a way to exercise the mind by building that willpower. So doing, when you do anything that kind of so such as like fasting, right? It's a challenging thing to do, and but it's beneficial because you're building that internal fire, which is like your willpower, and that's an important thing to have if you're on a yogic path, is that willpower. So yeah, that's one way to exercise the mind.
Yeah. And I always say too, like yoga starts in the mind. How far can your mind bend? How flexible are you in the mind? And that's where you'll find the flexibility in the body. So, um, I don't know about you, but when I teach students and they're experiencing restriction in the body or tightness in the body or pain in a pose, I always say inhale to expand the body. So inhale, see if you can envision with your third eye, with your mind's eye, the expansion of the muscles and the tissues. And that starts in the mind, right? So that's your mind expanding your perspective on pain, of discomfort, of just opening yourself, opening your mind and opening your body. It's that union of mind, body, and soul, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wanted to ask you your yoga journey, and I like how you have a bit of a tagline that's, teacher of authentic yoga. So you can tell me about that.
Yeah, so the authentic comes from my journey of teaching in studios. So I had, I've been practicing yoga for the last 10 years. I started in a very yang style. So I don't know if you're familiar with Bikram's yoga. So I started Bikram's. I hated my first class, but my said, okay, come back 3 times, and if you still hate it, you don't have to come again. I did 3 days in a row, and at the end, I just felt my body was lighter, my energy was flowing freely. And at that point, this was 10 years ago, I didn't know chakras, I didn't know I had an energetic body, I didn't know I had a different mental body, I didn't know the physical, mental, the energetic, everything was just, this is me, right? So, my journey started there. After about 3 months, I was able to tap into my third eye. Like I could see in a clearer way, more focused perception. I was able to go deeper into the poses because Bikram's style is the same class, the same dialogue, the same poses every single time. So I was able to turn my mind off. And so I come to this conclusion today that yoga is not a mindful practice, it's actually a mindless practice. When you're practicing the asanas, you're not using your mind, you're using your energy to feel the body. You're using your breath to move the body. When we start to think and intellectualize what's happening in the body, we come out of ourselves. We're no longer practicing a yoga. We're starting to then come out of that energy of groundedness. So the authentic comes from me teaching my own journey. So I always say, I can't teach you your meditation or your yoga. That is your unique individual journey to yourself. And I love how you said earlier that Ayurveda is a unique individual healing practice. There's no one fits all. And same with yoga, there's no one fits all. And so my challenge, um, the way I got to yoga with Apneet is I was teaching in studios. So I was teaching a class of 20, 30 people, 40 people at a time. And I just would look around and see that nobody was really practicing yoga because everybody is in their mind and everybody is looking at the next person, wondering if they're doing the right thing, if they're, conscious about themselves and whatnot. And so I realized that this is not yoga, this is a group fitness class. And so I went on my own journey. I started yoga at Apneet, just one-on-one classes. I do small groups, so couples, and I don't do more than 3 people at one time. And it's very basic. I just teach my students how to breathe and how to let go of the external world because meditation comes first. Without meditation, there's no yoga. So my classes are very oriented with just letting go of the external. And that's the first thing we do. If you can't get past that, we don't go past into advanced poses. We don't push the body further. Because I feel like that's where injuries happen in yoga. So when people get injured is because they're not meditating and they're not breathing into the body. They're pushing themselves with their mind, but they're not breathing and they're not grounded in that energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I do something similar in the sense of, having private clients as well. And again, like no more than like a group of 3 type of thing, and including both like the yoga practice, but also Ayurvedic lifestyle coaching as well.
Have you had any challenges being South Asian yourself and in the Western yoga world?
I think it's interesting because I follow some like Hindi yoga channels and things like that, and it's very different when you see the kinds of classes they are teaching versus the ones in the West. I do feel the ones in the West can sometimes be, like you said, more physical based, really kind of, yeah, all about like the outward, but then a lot of these Hindi channels that I'm following are more much more focused on, like, you know, this is what it's doing for your digestion, and this is what this pose is doing for this, and it's very specific and internal based. So that's one difference that I notice between the two.
Yeah, I'll share my own experience that I had one time teaching at a studio. And so all the instructors, I think I was the only Indian instructor there, they were mispronouncing namaste. So I had a really hard time, and this is like at the beginning of my teaching journey. So I had a really hard time with that. I didn't know if I should correct everyone or if I should just, stay with whatever everyone's doing. So I actually stopped saying namaste because I couldn't say it authentically. And so I stopped saying at the end of my classes. And I remember the studio owner, she came to me and she said, you have to say namaste at the end of your class to end it, because that's a standard we have here. And I actually ended up leaving that job because my energy just didn't relate and just didn't resonate and felt so inauthentic. I'm just wondering if you've experienced anything like that in your own journey.
I personally haven't, but there's I don't know if you're familiar. There's a podcast called Yoga is Dead. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I'm gonna write it.
Well, it's run by these two South Asian girls from the States, I believe, and they talk about everything similar to what you just described. So their experience of teaching in studios when they faced things like cultural appropriation and that kind of thing. And one of them told a story one time of how she corrected someone on, sorry, a fellow teacher at her studio. She corrected her on the pronunciation of one of the poses, and they were just absolutely not willing to listen to her or understand the correction, even though that's the right way to say it. But they kind of, yeah, they just didn't agree. So yeah, I see that happens.
And I just love that I'm seeing more and more Indian and South Asian women and men coming into the yoga community in the West here. It was very rare to see that. And so anytime I see another South Asian or Indian, someone from this lineage coming into this yoga practice, I get so excited and I just gravitate towards them. And I think it's so important that we come back to this because it's like you were saying, when you started on this journey, it just resonated with you because this is part of our lineage. It's part of your internal DNA wisdom that we have in us. And that's not just true for Indian and South Asian community. It's actually this wisdom resides within all of us. And so the reason why so many people are gravitating towards yoga, I believe, is because it helps us to shed those layers of society and just come back inside and relate to that wisdom we have within us. So when we're breathing and we're meditating and it feels good, there's something clicking inside and saying, well, this is the natural state I'm meant to be in. And this is normal. This is, there's that energetic feeling of home. If you have anything to add to that, you can.
Yeah, no, that was great. I think that describes it really well.
James is asking, have you ever used incense to enhance your yoga experience?
Yes, I do that pretty often, actually. I think that you know, scents have a lot of power and also impact on our physiology too. So whether it's essential oils or incense, I do like to have one or the other going.
Yes, me too. What's your favorite one?
There's a neroli one that I have with incense, and I just really love that one. And when it comes to essential oil, it depends on kind of like the vibe that you're going for. So if you know, you want to feel more energized and awake, then I'll choose like a more citrus kind of scent, or even peppermint sometimes. And then if you want to just calm down and relax, and you go for like lavender or something like that. So it just depends on the time of day or what you're in the mood for.
Yeah, I've been gravitating to rose incense right now. Oh my, amazing. And lavender oil. Those two right now are just really powerful for me.
Yeah, that's not, yeah, I like rose as well.
Let's see here. Does Ayurveda advocate for a vegetarian diet?
Yes, they do. Most of yoga and Ayurveda does promote for a vegetarian diet, but of course, you don't have to be vegetarian to practice these things, of course. But they do recommend that. And that kind of ties into ahimsa, nonviolence, as I mentioned earlier, as one of the yogic values. And that kind of goes for, standing for nonviolence, not only like a lot of these things go deeper than just their surface level textbook definition, right? So nonviolence means, of course, not being aggressive towards other people, but it also means not standing for anything that might cause harm or violence to another being. So whether that's like choosing fair trade buying options so that people are treated well while they're working to produce things, or even choosing like cruelty-free products, or even going as far as like choosing to be a vegetarian or vegan can be your way of practicing nonviolence.
Do you have any advice for people that are trying to make their way into becoming a vegetarian or vegan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually not fully a vegetarian, but it is something that I sort of do my best to practice. So if someone is wanting to do that, I would just say you can look at the days of the week. How often do you have meat, and just reduce it by one. So if you have meat, say 4 times a week, just make it 3 times. And then you can gradually go from there and just start to decrease the number of days. And what usually ends up happening is you don't end up missing it that much, anyways. And especially if you're eating wholesome and nourishing meals. So, yeah, that's what I would suggest. Do it day by day.
Yeah, I've had my own personal journey with giving up meat as well. So when I started doing yoga and started practicing, naturally my body was realizing that certain foods didn't match the vibration I wanted to achieve or the vibration I was now achieving. And I remember within a span of a year, I think I was trying to go vegetarian, but I would, have these cravings, and sometimes cravings are so strong, and our cravings are rooted so deep in our mind and in our emotions. So I remember not being so hard on myself, and I think that's one thing. If anybody is trying to go vegetarian, I would say just try not to be so hard on yourself. And if you do relapse and eat something that doesn't align with the diet that you're trying to achieve, it's okay and just try again the next day, right? And a lot of people I find, if they are trying to go vegetarian and then they have meat, they just stop their whole diet. They stop trying to be a vegetarian because it's impossible. I can't do this. It's too hard. But it's okay. We're all human, and it's okay to naturally, crave. So if you have a craving, the next day it's a fresh day. So you can try again. You can keep trying, and you can hold yourself in that space, even though you've had one time or one day where you weren't able to.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. James is asking, do you believe that karma can affect your wellness and spirituality?
Hmm. I don't know if I have the right answer to this, but my guess would be that it probably could. I mean, are we talking like past life karma or this current lifetime? It just depends. But I think that, yeah, I mean, like, I would believe that it can affect your wellness and your spirituality. I don't know if you have more to add to that, Apneet.
Karma is a very interesting subject, and I think I can talk about this like all day long. Um, but I'm curious to see like what does Ayurveda say about karma? Because I know karma is really big in India and the cultures and all the religions in India. Like we talk about karma a lot. So do you know if Ayurveda has anything to say about karma?
I feel like in my yoga teacher training, we talked more about karma than we did in my Ayurvedic training. So it's definitely a topic in that sphere of yoga and Ayurveda, but I think more so yoga covers it um, than Ayurveda.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, karma is really the energy that you put out. It's the intention that you put out. So, uh, when I was a kid and other kids were stepping on ants or, destructing flowers or picking all of these things, and I had this inner intuition that that was wrong. Like, why would you harm another being, even if it's like as small as an ant? And some people don't have that natural intuition. They need to build that, right? So yeah, I feel like everyone comes to this life with different karma, different understanding of karma, and it all just comes back to your intention. Your intention to do harm, your intention to do good, and what goes around comes around. So whatever you put out there will naturally come back to you. So that in itself can touch so many subjects and so many topics in spirituality. We can talk about like laws of spirituality just with talking about karma. I think that's a really deep, deep topic. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
James is also asking here, what is Ayurvedic massage and what benefits can it provide?
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do Ayurvedic massage, but the most common one is called an Abhyanga massage, and it's just this self massage that you can do. It's a full body massage recommended to do about 15 to 20 minutes before you take a shower. And you use oils based on your mind body constitution. So if you're a vata, pitta, or kapha person, so those are like the three main body types. So you would choose either like a warming oil, a cooling oil, or like a energizing and refreshing oil, and you would do there's specific ways to do it. So on your limbs, you're doing sort of like upward strokes, and then on your joints, you're doing more circular strokes, and you kind of follow that throughout the body. On your abdomen is also circular, and chest is circular. You can do all the way up to your head, even, and then you kind of let it seep in for about 15 to 20 minutes. And in that time, you can kind of do anything really, catch up on your phone or read, whatever it may be, and then you shower. And that's recommended to actually do there's no maximum actually. You can even do it every day, but I know it's a time-taking process. Not all of us in our modern day can do it every day, but Ayurveda does recommend to do it every day. But of course, if you could just incorporate that even once a week on the weekend, just to do that, and you'll feel really amazing after, because the word in Sanskrit for oil is sneha, and I'm not sure if you know, but that's also like it means love. So basically, like oil is very important in Ayurveda. So yeah, that's like a massage that you can do. And then of course you can get it professionally done too. There's different Ayurvedic head massages and things like that. And they are just very nourishing and supporting to the nervous system. So they completely ground you, and you just use a lot of oils that we even have at home. So for example, like a cooling oil is like coconut oil. A warming oil is like sesame or almond. Around this season in the fall and winter, you might want to choose one of those more warming oils. Then if it's summertime, you can choose more of a cooling oil, and so on. So that's sort of like a intro to the Ayurvedic massage. And then if you want to make it really simple, you can just do like a bedtime massage where you kind of just get a few of the key areas. So, behind the ears, on your temples, on your belly, and your feet. That's it. And you can that takes less than 5 minutes, and just go to sleep. Yeah, that's something you can do to get a better night's rest as well.
So sorry, that was the temples, the ears.
And your belly in circular motion.
Okay.
And specifically on the belly, you want to do like just below the belly button, but you can also venture off into like more of your abdomen too. And then,
Yeah. You mentioned for the massage, we're massaging towards the heart, I believe is what.
very similar to if you're doing dry brushing, kind of going in those same directions.
Okay. And dry brushing, what are the benefits of dry brushing?
A lot, yeah. Like improving your circulation. It's good to kind of get the lymph moving, and it also makes your skin a lot softer because it's sort of naturally exfoliating. So yeah, dry brushing goes really well if you do the dry brushing and then you do the Abhyanga massage. But of course, if you are short on time, you can kind of just pick one or the other. But yeah, really good.
That's awesome. Um, and you mentioned also like returning to nature. So can you speak on that, on your journey, on returning to nature, kind of like what that looks like for you in a day to day?
Yeah, so I think it first started a very long time ago. So we're going back to 2010. And at the time, I had insomnia, and I was just 17 years old, and I was taking prescription medication. And I just knew that I was using it, but I just knew that I didn't want to continue or be dependent on this. And I had this kind of like gut feeling that there's got to be another way out there, right? So during that time is sort of when my whole kind of like health and spirituality journey began, because I had a friend whose mom is a yoga instructor and a Reiki healer. And she was kind enough to offer me free Reiki sessions to help with the insomnia and the anxiety that comes with the insomnia. So that was what sort of opened my eyes for the very first time to all of this. And that's when you kind of just realize like there's this world of energy and alternative healing methods, right? And so that's what sort of started it all. And then, of course, I did my very first trip to a health food store after that. And this is back in 2010. It wasn't even that many and it wasn't that popular either. But yeah, so that was the, I guess, entry point. But today, what I think returning to nature means for all of us is that simple things such as just like aligning our life more with the sun and the seasons, and because we're intricately related and connected to nature, right? So little things that we can do to align ourselves with the sun and the seasons can make us not only healthier but happier as well. And I can explain a little bit more on that actually. So aligning with the sun can mean, sleeping more nighttime hours than daytime hours. It can mean eating during the hours of the sun because the sun is closely related to our digestive fire. So having your largest meal at around noon to 1 p.m., that's when the digestive fire is strongest, and not eating too much past sunset. And I know that's nowadays the sun is setting earlier, so kind of just aiming for like 6 p.m., no later. Than that. And those are two simple things that we can do that make a really big difference in our health, because you'll always hear people say when they eat a lighter and an earlier dinner and they sleep earlier, you always hear good things, right? No one ever says that hurt them or anything like that. So yeah, that's sort of what returning to nature can mean. And just having this reverence and love for like earth and all that it provides.
Yeah, I love that. I love like sunbathing, and I always and I feel like it's like such a cleanse. Like I feel like I'm being recharged, like my battery being recharged. And not only the sun, but the moon as well. So I've really been diving deep into researching the cycles of the moon and how it kind of affects women more, men as well, because we're 70% water. And so the moon is naturally moving us. But also because the moon is such a feminine force. And I've been doing a lot of inner goddess, inner feminine work. And so naturally, I'm being pulled to the energy of the moon. And sometimes I'll just gaze at the moon and have these really deep, deep reflections. Um, this deep energy, this deep wisdom coming forth. And it's true, returning to nature it really is returning to nature, because our ancestors or lineage, we used nature, we used the sun, we used the stars, the moon, the planets, the trees, right? The plants around us to help not just heal, but it was a part of us, you know? All of these elements around us, we saw them as extensions of ourselves. And I think it's so important to come back to that, and not just in the spiritual community, but make that a norm in society to go for a daily walk and to connect with the trees. So I don't know if you know, but like there's so many healing properties in trees and how they have like their own magnetic force. So I do nature therapy sessions where I take students into the forest and I have them just meditate with a tree, and I've experienced so many like deep meditational experiences with the trees myself. And so have other people. And I don't know if you've ever experienced like just that healing energy of that trees have.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine how profound that would be. I don't think I've ever formally meditated, with a tree, but of course, like if you consider, walking meditations and so on, there is a different energy that you get, and it's very grounding. And I think that, yeah, I totally believe in. I know there's a documentary on Netflix. Um, on I think it's on like mushrooms, and it's about how they communicate and the trees communicate, and it's someone told me about it. I haven't watched it yet, but it's something that I want to look into.
Yeah, I'm so passionate about this, so I can just share with you a little bit. So the
Yeah.
root trees are actually all connected. So they did a study, and there was a disease or a parasite added to one tree, and they actually saw that the other trees surrounding this one tree were sending nutrients and healing properties over in through the roots into that tree. So, like, have you seen the movie Avatar?
No, I haven't.
Have
I'm
to watch.
probably one of the few people that hasn't, but it's on my list.
Yeah, no, definitely watch that because they have scenes where they show this. So they show the intelligence of the life around us, right? Like it's receptive to us. And they just illustrate that in a really cool way. So if you guys haven't seen Avatar, make sure you watch it.
And I like that you mentioned sunbathing actually, because that is one of the things. So, in addition to like aligning with um, the sun is also something that should be revered, and it's because it's like the giver of life force and prana, right? So sunbathing is, I guess some people might not really be for it, just because there's a lot of information about how the sun can damage our skin, and I'm definitely not denying any of that information, but from what I have learned, depending on the time of day, the sun's rays can be very healing for our body and mind. And I believe it's, the first hour or two after sunrise and the last hour or two before sunset, not when the sun is at its strongest. Some people do recommend, sunbathing daily if you can, depending on where you live. But yeah, it's very, very healing, and I definitely am all for it.
Yeah, James is saying for Caribbean and South Asian communities, there's a lack of vitamin D when we're living in colder climates. And I totally feel that, James, because um, my lineage is from India. So when I go back home to India and I sit in the sun, I don't know what it is, but something just feels right. And I just feel like, oh my God, I want to sit here forever. And back and I experienced the cold winters in Canada, and the sun comes out. Well, like today the sun's out, so I just can't wait to get out and just sit in the sun. Like that is my happiest moment of the day when the sun is out and I'm just sitting in the sun.
Yeah, I can relate.
Um, Arfa, any last things that you want to touch on? Anything you want to share with the viewers relating to really anything? So the purpose here is just to expand our perspective on all of these topics. So Ayurveda, yoga, nature. Any last comments you would like to make here?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone is interested, well, there's like mind body type quizzes online that you can take. But the one that I really like is from Deepak Chopra's book, Perfect Health. It has a 60 question quiz. So it asks you every question under the sun about your health, your mind, your personality, and that way you can get a really good idea. And that's a great starting point to kind of get to know your unique mind body type. And then you'll see that there's outlined exercises, diet, lifestyle just for you. And it might be different what's for you than is for me, and so on. So that's a good way to kind of get an intro to it, but also just very basic things, like sleeping a little bit earlier and, eating a bigger lunch but a lighter dinner and little things like that. You'll just start to feel better. So those are just some little things that people can do.
Yeah, and I would just touch on that and say that um just kind of aligning with your intuition because we have this inner wisdom in us and like you say there's no one right for everyone. So that wisdom that is inside of you. All you have to do is tap into that and allow that to guide you on your journey. Yeah. And sorry, what was the book? It's Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, it's called Perfect Health, and it's that's the very first book I read on Ayurveda, and it's all about that. So yeah, it covers all the body types, and then he goes very in depth into things like the marma points, which are like the acupressure points. He talks about massage, yoga for your body type, and all of that. It's all in there.
Amazing. So I'm going to put that in the description and hopefully you guys can check that out.
Mhm.
It was so nice talking to you, Arfa.
Thank you. You as well. It was nice to meet you
Yeah,
virtually.
wisdom.
Thank you.
And
You too.
bye.